It was time to consolidate down the hives for winter. Although we really weren't going to process and keep much of the honey, we're going to feed it back to the bees. You can't leave honey in the supers. You have to pull the supers to get the hives down to the right size, but you have to extract the honey and store it. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We also have an oxalic acid treatment coming up, and you really want to remove any surplus honey off of the hives before you treat them with the oxalic acid. So, here we go. My plan was to take the supers off, the medium supers, and these can be divided into two categories, the ones above the queen excluder and the ones below the queen excluder. Obviously, the ones above the queen excluder shouldn't have any brood, and the ones below might. So we're going to sort the frames into four categories. First category would be a full frame of honey that we got to take for extraction. The second category would be an empty frame. I mean, one that has no resources or anything on it whatsoever. We have a few of those because we did some checkerboarding and we want to pull those. The third category would be, partial resources, pollen, bee bread, uncapped honey, and those we want to keep on the hives, obviously. And the fourth would be if we found any frames that contain any brood. So, in opening it up, the first thing you want to do is you want to really smoke the heck out of the upper supers. Drive the bees down to the lower super, makes it a little bit easier. And then you get, as I later refer to it, and as other beekeepers have referred to it, the bee annoyance device. They don't like that brush. It's a soft brush, it doesn't harm the bees, but oh man, do they get mad at it. Didn't have too much of a time this year, but there's times you can see them all bent over trying to sting the bristles of the brush. But they're fairly well behaved. Now, there's an example of an empty frame, so we're just going to set that guy aside. And you saw the other frame that I pulled had a lot of honey on it, and this one's also an empty frame. And that's what we're going to continue doing in this hive. It's a little off camera, but the super that I'm putting the full frames into right now, you want to keep that covered. The one down on the ground that I'm putting the partial frames in is open. That's going to be returned to some bees somewhere. But when you pull the full frames of honey and you put them in a super, you want to keep it covered. Or by the time you're done working, you may have a raging robbing episode going on. What's crazy this year is the amount of yellow jackets that are trying to get their fill of honey. It's really surprising when I go over, maybe every third insect that's trying to get after things is a yellow jacket. And I don't know where they're coming from. I haven't found any massive nests, but someone got the word out that there's honey to be eaten, and the yellow jackets like that just as well. So we really have two grades of honey that I'm running into. One is the lighter clover honey, and if I keep any for human consumption, that'll be the honey that I take. The other is a darker honey, and it may be left over actually from last year's goldenrod flow, and that one definitely would be fed back to the bees. Nice brood. Frames like that contain brood, we're gonna put right back to where they were. Without the queen excluder being between the deep and the medium, the queen is free to go up there and lay, and that was actually a fairly nice pattern in that super. Solid honey frame. So obviously the brood frames remain, and the full frames of honey are going for extraction. The empty frames, or partially drawn but without resources, will go right onto a stack that is protected by mothballs. So that leaves the fourth category of frames, ones that have a little bit of honey, a little bit of resources, but not enough to extract. Those frames will end up going in one of two places. One is to fill out blank slots that might have been opened up by frames we took out full of honey, or frames that were empty that we took out. So what I'm most interested in is sorting out empty frames, full frames,
and partial honey frames and getting these guys down to one super.
So the remaining partial frames, which I expect there'll be about one super full of, we're going to put on hive number 9. By the time I wrap up here, there'll be a little bit of robbing going on. So we put them on number 9 because any bees that go back out of that hive and go back to their home hive and say, hey, here's where some honey is, will be met with a fairly good defense, and the chances of number 9 being robbed are very slim.
A fellow beekeeper referred to this brush as the bee annoyance brush, and it probably is. They're not too fond of it.
In a larger commercial operation, what is commonly used is fume boards and bee escape boards to get the bees out of the supers you're going to extract from. It's very effective and great for, not having to spend a lot of time working on the supers. But because of the fact that we're a very small operation and there aren't too many that I have to go through, I'm going through them manually with a brush. With 7 hives and using this manual method, I was out there for about 3 hours or more doing this. As I said, it isn't too time effective.
So this then is a full super. So we're going to take that out of the yard.
But I'll spare you the 3 hours. I'm trying to edit this down to just a few minutes to get an idea of, what the procedure is if you're a smaller operation like myself.
Pure honey.
Now this is a good example of an older frame from probably last year that had goldenrod honey on it. You can see how much darker the frame of honey is compared to some of the newer stuff that I just pulled off the colonies. Conversely, if you look at this frame, you can see how light it is. And this is one, if I extract it, I will extract it. I might save for consumption. By the time I was done, I had about 4 full supers of honey and a couple of extra frames. And when I get to the extraction phase, I might take a few of those frames and say, no, these are just going to go straight back to the bees. And the rest will extract and divide in between the stuff going to the bees and maybe a little for family and friends.
Heavy smoking.
Anybody who watched the process last year when we did it knows that when we're done, the supers go back on the hives and the bees have a blast cleaning and drying out the supers. We also take all of the extraction equipment and any dry cappings that aren't quite dry and put them out in the bee park, and the bees will come out and basically clean it off, and it's really an amazing sight to see. Last week I was decrystallizing some honey in the driveway, just a row of bottles in the driveway, and I accidentally broke one. And it was amazing. Within 24 hours, it just was coated with bees. And when they were done, there wasn't even a sign that there was a drip of honey in the driveway, just the, cleaned off pieces of broken glass.
Honey. Brood. One more brood. I think we've done what we can with this as far as consolidation. So one last check of our bottom boards revealed hive beetles, which are a little late this season, but they're in there. So the one last thing I'm going to do is give these girls some peppermints. Till next week from Buzz Park, remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you then. Goodbye.